Hello, welcome back. This next little video is just about this Frontalini that I've been working on. Lovely Italian accordion, and I've been doing a few jobs on this one, and the next job I'm going to do is to do with the bellows tape. Now this one's got a few issues with the bellows tape which I just want to explain. So what I'll do, I'll just bring the camera down a touch and hopefully I can explain what's going on with this bellows tape. So just get a little pointer. So the first thing is down here the bellows tape is worn through to the cardboard. Now what I'll try and do here is I'll just zoom in a bit. Let me just show you. Okay, so as you can see here, the bellows tape is worn through, and you can see the cardboard of the folds of the bellows. And now it's not leaking air at the moment, but it will once you've worn through that cardboard. That will leak air. Now, so what's happened is that's just rubbing as you're playing it on your knee or whatever it's touching. So that's important to sort out. But the other thing is up here, you can see that the corners just up here are not being protected by that bellows tape. So the bellows tape has kind of worn off or come away from the corners, and so these corners are exposed. Those ones are fine, but these ones are exposed, and also down here the corners are exposed. Now this is not good, because what will happen here is that because they're not being kind of covered with the bellows tape, they can actually become loose, because the bellows tape helps to secure them in place. So on this end of the accordion here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to replace the silver here and the silver here, and the white looks like it's been replaced actually fairly recently, so it's in good shape. So the white's going to stay where it is, and the silver is going to be replaced. Now I could put patches of tape on these and patches here, but and that will work, but cosmetically it does look a little bit scruffy, and I have got enough bellows tape to be able to do a nice job and just do the whole length and get that sorted and get these corners areas sorted by just putting new bellows tape across there and there. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off the treble on the bass side, and so just left with the bellows, so much easier to manhandle and work with. So I'll do that, and then I'll show you how I approach the next little bit. Okay, now the next step is to measure exactly how much bellows tape we're going to need. Now I'm going to use the silver that's on there as a reference, and I'm going to exactly measure it. I've done it just now, but I'll just get my ruler on there, and it's 167 millimeters. So I'm just going to double check that. But 167 is where that needs. Oh, so you can't see where it needs to be. So I'm just going to write that down somewhere on a bit of paper for future reference when I'm cutting it all out. Now the next step is a little bit of a tricky one, because you've got to get the old bellows tape off. Now this can come off fairly nicely, or it can be a little bit tricky depending on how well it's stuck on. And the thing to do here is just to be really careful, because what you don't want to do is start to be a bit gung-ho about it and then start pulling off or damaging the cardboard underneath, or the fabric you've got there, which is just covering the cardboard. So what I'm going to do is just use a fine craft knife, maybe a pen knife as well, and I'm just going to just gently flick up the corner of the old tape, and then just pull the tape off carefully as I can, as I'm going to do that for all of the folds apart from the white ones, because I'm going to leave those be because they're in good shape. So I'm just going to take off the bellows tape and I'll show you what. Okay, here we go. And so it looks a little bit rough at the moment, because it always looks a bit worse until it gets better, because I've got the bellows tape off. But once we've got the new bellows tape on, that will then make everything look tidy again. So there we are, that's the bellows tape off. Next step is to cut the bellows tape. So I've got the same silver pattern, and this has got a stripe pattern on it, and sometimes it's plain, but you can get both kinds. It's important to get the right one so it matches. So we've got a nice silver striped pattern, and now I need to cut out my sections of bellows tape. Now what I'll need is one for each of these folds, and I'll just bring that round a bit. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, so 8, and then these ones here, right at the top where the frame is, they just need half a piece, so I really need to cut out 9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 2 at the ends to make 9. So I need 9 sections of 167, and this is where you have to be really, really accurate, because they have to be all the same, and they have to be 167. So I'm going to just push it up against my ruler, and then with a nice sharp pair of scissors, I'm just going to make a little mark. So I'm going to get a sharp pencil, to make my mark, and I'm going to just mark it on the back rather than on the front, so it doesn't look, you can't see it. So 1, 6, 7. Just double check. There we go, so I've got my mark in the right place. So once I've cut one, I can use that as the guide to cut all the others to exactly the same length. Make sure you cut it straight so it looks fine. And before I cut them, I just cut the first one, I'm just going to double check my measuring by just offering it up to the bellows and just checking that that is actually the length that I want. In fact, I'm going to cut off, just good to check that, so I'm going to cut off another mil. There we go. I'll put that up. That's better. So now I'm going to cut these to all exactly the same length. I'll show you. Okay, now I've cut me pieces of bellows tape. They're all exactly the same length, so I'm good job I offered it up at the beginning because it was just a mil too much and I just wanted it to look really nice. So I've cut them all out. Now the next thing is to prepare everything you're going to need. So what I've got my glue, which is my favourite Eileen's Turbo Tacky glue. I've got a little pot and I just put that on top of there. I've got my glue applicators, which is my finger, and I've also got my clamps because I'm going to need those as well. So this is the way that I do it. I'm sure there's other ways of doing it, but this is the way that I like to do it. It's a little bit time consuming, but I just like the way it works. So what I'm going to do is first of all get my first piece, and I'm going to fold it exactly in half. And the reason for this is because if I can get a fold in it, it just makes it easier to fit onto the bellows fold. So just going to fold it in half. And then I'm going to get my ruler and just draw it along. Just try to get a crease into that fold. There we go. And the next thing is to get some glue onto the bellows tape. So let's get some of this oily, super tacky, whatever it's called, out. Now the important thing here is to make sure you get the whole of the bellows not covered with glue, not covered but coated, but even to the corners, because if you don't get it right to the corners will lift and then the whole thing can come off. So you have to be careful to get the glue all the way along. So I find that the finger application system works the best. Just be careful to get it right into the corners. And what I tend to do is leave it for a minute or two just to dry for a little bit, just before I attach it to the bellows fold. There we go, just give myself a t-shirt, wipe my hands a minute. So then, this is a nice bit. I like doing this. So I'll bring that down here. So I'm just going to turn the camera a tiny bit. There we go. Is choose your first fold. I'm going to choose one next to the white that's already there, and then you have to offer it up so it's completely symmetrical, and you've got the fold line to help, because that will give you an indication of obviously where to fold it. And then what you have to do is offer it up. You can't spend too long on this because it will start to dry, but there we go. And once that's in place, then what I'm going to do is get my clamps and just clamp it, start it right at the corner, because you want that definitely clamping, and just have enough clamps to go along the whole bellows fold, because you want it all completely stuck. Oopsie. So don't drop your clamps on the floor, because that's silly. Oopsie. And make sure you go right to the end, otherwise it will come off. There we are. There you go. So that's going to I'm going to leave that for about 15 minutes or so and do the next one. So it's not a quick job, but it is a nice job. So I'll show you when that one's ready to come off, and then I'm just going to go through the process of doing all the others. But let me just give me 15 minutes for that just to dry, and I'll show you how. Okay, so now a chance to show how that first one's gone. So I'll just take those clamps off. Sorry, I'll get the right angle. Taking these off. So there we are. That's the first one. All the way on. So I'm just going to do all the rest of them until I get to the end ones, and I'll show you how I do those ones. I'm going to do the same thing on these ones apart from the two end ones, and I'll show you that separately. So let me just get cracking on that and show you how it's looking when I've done it. Okay, so that's the main folds all done. So it looks a lot nicer now. I haven't done the white, I've just left that in place. That was a little bit uneven, so the person doing the white hadn't done it very evenly, but it's pretty good. But I've made sure that the grey silver I put on is nice and even, and that looks nice. So the last bit is the final bit of bellows tape, which goes on the next to the frame. Now this is where you have to have half the width, because it's only half of a fold, if you like. So I'm going to cut this one piece in half exactly, so let me just do that for a sec. There we go. So the two halves, and so I haven't got to fold this one, but this is a tricky bit now, because what you have to do is stick it onto the half of the fold and then tuck the other edge just into the gap between the bellows and the bellows frame without damaging that joint, if you like. So what I normally use is a little one of these, just a little flat blade screwdriver, and just gently push it into that little gap. So let's show you how I do this. So I'll just turn the angle a little bit. I might just even zoom it in. Like that, perfect. Right, so I'm going to apply some glue, so I'll get some of this. Hang on a minute, it's not. My focusing is focusing not on my glue. Wait a minute. Right, so got my glue. I'm going to put some glue onto the. Can't see it. Focus in too much. Onto the bellows tape. Let me zoom out a little bit. There you go. So make sure it's fully glued all the way to the edges, because you want it all to be sticking. You don't want it to be coming off. More glue needed. Yeah, running out of glue. Go. So give it a nice coating all the way along, like so. A bit messy this. Right, so now what I've got to do, I've got to offer it up exactly in the right position, and just leave enough hanging that I can then poke it into the little gap. So this is not an easy one, this is the hardest one to do really, but let me just get the alignment of the tape correct before I do anything else. And then get my little screwdriver, I'm just going to ease that into that little gap. So, but also have to press it in. So I'm pressing it in with my thumb and also pressing it into that gap. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get this done. Okay, there we are. So that's the final bit done there. So I'm just going to do the final one on the top side, and then I'll show you the completed. Okie dokie. So these bellows have now been finished. So I've actually finished off that side, and I did some on this side as well. So I'm happy with that. It's all looking nice and tidy. I just did a little bit of a clean up on the other sides and just glued a few bits down that were coming adrift. But that's all looking very nice now, so I'm happy with that. So that's the bellows have been given a little bit of TLC. Now the next thing on the list is to put the bellows straps back on. Where did I put them? Here they are. So I've got to put these bellows straps back on, and they weren't fitted very well when I took them off. They were just loose and the wrong screws really. So before I put them back on, I had to put the accordion back together, because once you've put new bellows tape on, and I've also put some new bellows gasket on as well, the distance that the bellows straps got to meet or close is different. So always do the bellows straps last if I've done any work on the bellows or the bellows gasket, so that otherwise you might find you put the straps on and they're just too tight. So what I'm going to do is put the accordion back together and fit these